16 years ago, Halo Reach was released, and the world experienced one of the most impactful last moments of a campaign ever. If you've seen my content, then you know how formative Halo 3 was for me. It's my favorite game of all time. Reach was its full game follow-up 3 years later, and it delivered one of the most emotionally gripping stories Halo has ever told, with a multiplayer that saw Bungie advancing what they learned from Halo 3 and tweaking for the better.
Well, that's the wide consensus at least.
My poll revealed that a lot more people prefer Reach than I previously assumed.
But I actually don't remember Reach in the most positive light.
So, 16 years later, I want to revisit the game whose ending has haunted me into adulthood, and see if my issues with its multiplayer were fair, or just someone who was averse to change to their favorite game of all time. And throughout this whole video, I want to look at Reach through a specific lens. This was Bungie's last Halo. Was it the beautiful send-off we were led to believe it was, or was it just a contract obligation before they could move on to the greener pastures of Destiny? When discussing Reach, I kind of have to start with the story, as this was the standout aspect of the game and a lot of the hype before its release. Where ODST was a midquel, an addition to smooth over events between Halo 2 and 3, Reach was a full-on prequel to Halo Combat Evolved, both additive stories to the main Bungie trilogy, both with a specific vision to fulfill. See, before Halo 1's release, Microsoft commissioned writer Eric Nyland to write The Fall of Reach in 2001 to set up their new game's science fiction universe. The events of this novel are directly referenced as Halo 1 begins, but besides that book, this was the only way the video game only audience would have this pivotal loss to humanity referenced. So, in 2010, Bungie, as their final goodbye, drops Halo Reach, which fully expands on those events, though it's not a one-to-one adaptation of the novel, as the POV and occurrences are notably different. What happens to Reach isn't even remotely a secret. The marketing tagline for the game is "Remember Reach." It's dark and ominous from the jump, before you even load the game up, but what truly sets the tone is the opening imagery. The opening shot is a planet on fire, landscapes ravaged by war, no signs of life, and we slowly pan down to a Spartan helmet with a bullet hole through its visor.
I don't know about you, but this clearly sets up what's to follow,
and implants the seeds of dread as I play this for the first time in 16 years for what I'm about to experience. We begin by meeting our Spartans, Noble Team. Wholly new to the series, our main character is joining this team and is known as Lieutenant, or 6, his designation as the 6th member. The team is made up of 5 other Spartans: Carter, Kat, June, Emil, and George. I mentioned in my previous video that ODST was really an attempt at a Band of Brothers story, but lacked the time and development to fully land it. Reach is their Band of Brothers story.
At the start of the game, this is a happy, living collective that will surely stay this way.
We are a team of Spartans stationed on humanity's greatest military world outside of Earth, a planet humanity believes is unknown to the Covenant, the alien force we've been at war with for nearly 3 decades. Our team is tasked with basic defense, but mostly rebel cleanup across the surface of Reach. A relatively simple task for a group of super soldiers, especially in comparison to what we see later in the series. We get a quick introduction to the team before heading out to check on a disturbance we presume is more rebel shenanigans.
Noble Team drops into a small settlement with some signs of a fight.
And signs of a slaughter even.
After talking to some not-so-friendly locals, we get pointed to another disturbance.
And, shocker, we have Covenant on Reach. This triggers the Winter Contingency, a full emergency mobilization of the UNSC military to save Reach, as the Covenant have a tendency to glass planets. We are then whisked to an Oni facility to help lock it down. Oni is the Halo universe's secret operations task force, and this base specifically seems to be a focus of the Covenant. We are introduced to a very dismissive Halsey, who is somehow super nice to Big George. George has one of those accents that makes ma'am sound like mum, so it's a little confusing. This is one of the coolest aspects to this game from a lore perspective that we'll come back to later. But just know that Halsey is the lead for military science discoveries in this universe, the mother of the Spartan 2s, creator and biological source of Cortana, and the lead researcher of Forerunner tech.
And would you be shocked to hear that Halsey's hiding the fact that she's got a piece of Forerunner tech underneath this base? I'm probably skipping a little too far ahead here.
Mission 3 gets me excited, and here's why. It's the closest thing we get to ODST's recon ops feel we get in this game. We get a night mission, and with that we get night vision back in my Halo game, baby. Paired with June, we do a lot of sniping as we scout the total forces the Covenant have in play, and surprise surprise, this isn't a specific Covenant raid, it's a full-on invasion. We then assault their anti-air guns and breach a Covenant spire, taking down the shield to call in the big guns and take the facility out, only for gather a massive Covenant ship in orbit to absolutely decimate our UNSC frigate before it can actually accomplish anything.
So we take the fight with the Covenant to space. We join a few ODST and assault this airbase, where George and Six take a hold of a spacecraft and take us to the space section of the game.
This isn't the most impressive space combat sim, but as a change of pace it works and isn't unforgiving. After clearing out the Covenant fleet, we get funneled into a Covenant supercarrier with a slipspace bomb.
Unfortunately, we have to manually detonate the bomb.
And before Six can protest, George bear hugs us and drops us outside the ship, sacrificing himself and sending us plummeting to Earth, Chief style. I think the onions are being cut somewhere. One of my biggest gripes with ODST was that outside of the Rookie and Buck, we didn't spend enough time with the squad for the emotional arcs to really land. Reach doesn't give us tons of time either, but through the paired missions in the first section, 4 of the 6 Noble members get real character work done. Not massive amounts, but a lot for a Halo game in this genre. And the character with the most depth so far, by a long shot, is George. This man is a giant who is communicating with locals, trying to be friendly, interacting with Halsey, and having a small moments with us before he pushes Six off for his sacrifice.
Besides the penultimate moment of the campaign, this has got to be the saddest.
Which says something since we haven't known him for more than 3 hours at this point. So I'm feeling a certain type of way as I plummet to Earth. We eventually make it to New Alexandria, a big city mid-evacuation from the Covenant. ODST showed us post-evacuation, a city already ravaged. Now we're seeing it happen live. Citizens in a panicked frenzy as the Covenant mow them down. You have to be careful how you proceed, as a wayward grenade could incinerate a civilian and reset the mission. This isn't no Modern Warfare 2 airport scene.
Do you remember when that was the biggest gaming controversy?
The campaign is riding emotional highs, but also weaving new ground, tying the civilian perspective from ODST directly into what we're actively watching happen this time. We meet back up with the team and I have to deliver the news about George, but the team bundles the pain for later and continues the evac. Eventually we're taken airborne to help clear buildings and enemy weapons blocking the escape. This felt very much like the aerial escape mission from ODST, but this time we're witnessing the Covenant invasion from a macro lens. Instead of handfuls of civilians being slaughtered, we see high-rises collapsing and, even more horrific, Covenant ships glassing entire districts as we fly. I was mesmerized. The comms didn't really reflect the panic I was feeling seeing this play out live, but the absolute decimation taking place is wild. Then, as we wrap, we're tasked with heading back to the Oni base to help evac Halsey and our research. Mid-conversation, on our way down a skyscraper, Kat gets a sniper bullet through the visor. Just like that, our next fallen teammate.
George's death was a sacrifice. Sad, but a heroic finality to this Spartan warrior.
Kat's was something else. There was a lack of reality to it. She was mid-convo and was just gone. This was a different kind of shock, a reminder how random war can be.
At this point, I'm starting to wonder about the power scaling of these Spartans.
Master Chief is literally unkillable,
whilst 2 of the 6 of Noble Team are dead in a small amount of time. And my dread? Well, my dread is building.
Coincidentally, we're headed back to Halsey's location to extract her data, and that weird interaction she had with George is at the top of my mind. See, because my family and friends had become obsessed with Halo 3,
my dad had gotten my brothers and I the legendary edition of Halo Reach.
For anyone that remembers, this was a giant care package that held the Noble Team statue and was paired with a bunch of lore stuff, one notably being Halsey's notes.
Now, this seems small, but this was actually a pivotal moment for me, to begin chasing down the books and getting a baseline on this universe.
Previous to this, lore in video games wasn't a big part of them for me. Halsey's journal was a literal light bulb moment where I saw the value of it, and it ties directly to a realization I have made this many years later playing the game again. See, Master Chief has this super cool dark lore around the Spartan program. Halsey started this project young, kidnapping children and replacing them with duds that would die out to natural causes, then subjecting the survivors to insane genetic and physical enhancements to make them literally super soldiers. Most of the kidnapped children died. Their bodies couldn't take it. Of those that survived, Master Chief is the most notable, but it turns out George was also one of them. This is why the man literally dwarfs the others on Noble Team, and why Halsey has this weird maternal vibe for him and not the others. I just presumed they were all Spartan 2s, but it turns out the rest of them were all Spartan 3s. A different program that recruited war orphans, kids whose families the Covenant had already killed. Less extreme enhancements, lighter armor, basically budget Spartan 2s, used for more expendable missions. I say all this as we enter Halsey's new fascination. It turns out this base is on top of a Forerunner artifact. Forerunners are the previous advanced civilization that is mysteriously gone now, and the Covenant and humans fight over their tech, the rings that the series takes its name from being the most notable piece of it. Halsey has a new one underneath the base, and the Covenant seem pretty adamant on acquiring it. After defending it from them for quite a bit, we're led in to help evac Halsey. Not before we get a surprise. It turns out the package is an AI built from the Flash clone of Halsey's brain. So if you've been wondering why Halsey's voice scratches an inner part of your brain, it's because she's the voice of Cortana. Our mission is to get Cortana off of Reach, and when I say the musical notes that play when we see her gave me a shiver down my spine,
you are to take her to the UNSC shipbreaking yard.
I would imagine this effect was not only reserved for me. Halsey infers that Cortana has chosen Six to be her guardian. The plan is to get Cortana to the Pillar of Autumn before it evacuates the planet. June separates from the team to help evac Halsey, which ultimately saves June. Something I didn't pick up on in my first playthrough. Our team is now down to 3, Carter, Emil, and myself. The mission is to get to the Pillar of Autumn as fast as possible, since it's prepping to leave the planet and we can't miss that window. As we bolt that way, we are tailed by the Covenant and it's not looking good. A shot up Carter tells us to bail from the ship and go on foot while he holds their attention. We make the classic Halo near finale vehicle dash to catch our escape window, though I do think this was done much better in this rendition versus ODSTs. As we are forced on foot, we are cornered by a scarab blocking our path. A last chance sacrifice by Carter in his shot at Pelican kamikazes into the scarab,
saving us but ending his own life.
We have to fight off the attacking Covenant, who are in full assault mode of the Pillar of Autumn.
Emil mans the anti-air gun as I deal with the ground forces and try to get aboard the Pelican to get to the ship.
But as I'm about to board and take Cortana to safety, Emil is lanced through the back by some elites, and the attacking airships take out the other Pelican. Six then makes the decision to stay behind and cover their escape by taking over the anti-air gun and protecting the launch. And that's how we're left behind. I've played through Reach once ever, but unlike ODST, its story and finale mission are seared into my brain. The dread I've been feeling wasn't because I was about to have all of Noble Team slowly get picked off. No.
The dread was that I've been thinking about this mission ever since the very first time that I played it.
You are left to survive as long as possible as increasingly difficult Covenant forces push your position. Slowly, your gear starts failing, you lose minimap and ammo count functionality, and then the resources you use to protect yourself dwindle. You need to be increasingly vigilant to survive in these ruins as tanks take pot shots from a distance and elite squads bear down on you. You know this is the end, but you hope that by staying alive a little longer, you'll get a different conclusion. I'm not even slightly exaggerating when I say this. I used to think about this mission all the time, thinking I would try it again and see if I could get a different ending. But the dread and the underlying realization that there was no saving Six was what really held me back. It's 16 years in the making, but I have finally come back to the mission I always told myself I would come back to, and my heart is beating like wild. Fortunately, I do have an Aura Ring, so I can actually go back to this exact moment and see the actual heart rate increase.
My resting heart rate is around 60, but for the 10 minutes that I played this mission, it spiked to around 110.
Did I realistically last that long in the end? No. But I definitely lasted longer than my original time experiencing this though.
Maybe twice as long.
But you get to a point of the fight where a cutscene occurs and we see Six pull off his helmet and get taken down by elites. We get a slow pan on the helmet, the same helmet the game showed us at the very beginning. The Pillar of Autumn is heading toward the ring to begin the events of Halo Combat Evolved, and Reach has been decimated. But we get a glimpse of the world flourishing again as life slowly returns. The series technically started with us leaving Reach in Halo 1, and it ends with us finally experiencing that. The game has come full circle. After completing the campaign after 16 years since my first dance with it, my proximity to my playthrough of ODST is fresh in my mind, and my comments in that video were more accurate than I thought possible.
I basically said that ODST was a testing ground for Bungie, that it was a safe and quick attempt at a Band of Brothers story.
No one died, but we had this noir mystery mixed with a team trying to survive, and I saw elements of what would be Reach in there. After playing through Reach again, the layout and similarities are shocking. A soldier joining a long-standing team with existing bonds, a simple task twisted by Oni vs Covenant fights over Forerunner relics, an AI bonding with an alien element that needs to be evac'd ASAP, a driving mission with a scarab blocking the path, and throughout the whole thing, the Covenant glassing whole cities is the penultimate moments. The parallels are too specific to be a coincidence,
But the core difference is what makes Reach hit a lot harder.
ODST played with the risk of losing a member, one moment where the team bands together to save one of their own from a brute about to kill him. Reach, on the other hand, plays with the complete desolation of the team. It's this gripping with the reality of losing someone close to you in warfare that really drives it home. My gripe with ODST was there just wasn't enough time to get attached. With Reach, there really wasn't that much more time, but George, Six, and Carter's deaths land in different emotional ways, and I wouldn't be shocked if Kat's and Emil's hit hardest for others.
Different forms of grief for different players.
We have to remember, this is a shooter campaign. The genre's audience wants lore and fun campaigns at best, but is mostly driven by the multiplayer. So when a shooter campaign hits emotionally, that's notable because it wasn't targeted for its emotional through line. When it hits, it transcends the mediocre baseline the genre has set, and you get something special. The music is part of how Reach pulls it off. Halo's music is an all-timer. Halo 3's soundtrack is arguably one of the best in gaming, and ODST's iconic jazz noir score is its own separate entity. But going into Reach, I never really remembered its music like those two. This time I actively listened for it, and it's wildly different again.
This game turns the orchestral thrumming that we've come to know and turns it into a holy tune of dread instead of hype.
You'll get moments where you're in a team fight and getting some 2000s rock montage theme, and the very next moment, Marty is amplifying my existential dread by laying down God's judgment through the soundtrack. Maybe that's why I never noticed it as a standout. It inherently intertwined with the building feeling of loss, sacrifice, and impending doom this game has been building since the very first frames. I don't think I'll ever forget the campaign because of the dread I felt the first time, and even more the second. My heart rate spiked as I panicked to save this character, hoping this would be the time that Six survived. But we saw at the start, his fate was sealed. I imagine I'll eventually play Red Dead Redemption 2 again for this series, and we'll have a similar feeling waiting for that dreadful first cough to come out of Arthur's mouth. When it comes to story and emotional gravitas, Halo Reach is the peak of what the series has offered. Now, I haven't played Halo Wars 2, so maybe I'm missing something, but I think this campaign's emotional elements transcend everything else in the franchise. I think the campaign was great, but I think Reach was voted so highly because of its tweak to the multiplayer formula Bungie had been holding on to thus far. Now, I want to come right out and say it. I was nervous about making this video because I don't remember Reach's multiplayer with too much fondness because of these changes. But after revisiting its multiplayer, I may have changed my opinion slightly. The first thing you'll notice if you've gone from a Halo 3 game right into a Reach multiplayer match is the handling and tuning. It's been 3 years, the formula has been tweaked. There have been fidelity upgrades, and gunplay just feels a bit tighter and maybe less floaty. Hey, I like Halo 3 floaty, it's just going from Halo 3 to Reach, there's a lot more noticeable punch. The next notable thing, and my red flag, were the abilities. Mid-2000s saw the atypical fast-paced walk as your arena shooter pace, but with the genre teeming with competition, everyone was making slight tweaks, and whether this was for the better or for the worse, sprinting would be the first step towards the high-movement multiplayer shooters we see currently. Previous to Reach, it was just a nice brisk pace, but Reach added sprint in the form of armor ability. See, previously Halo had guns and equipment scattered around their maps. The powerful guns were usually what the average player sought out, but I would imagine that the average Halo player didn't lean too heavily into the broad assortment of equipment, which, if used correctly, was super overpowered in situations. Reach moves the equipment entirely into the new loadouts function and has things like sprinting and jetpacks as options, or even invisibility, immunity, or a clone as more fun options. I'm quite sure that I locked sprint or jetpack every single time back then. I feel this way since I'm leaning that way as I play again now, and I am getting frustrated. Sprinting just feels useless unless it's an objective game mode where getting somewhere faster is the goal. It's even more useless when my first 4 to 5 matches it feels like every enemy is using the invincibility perk, armor lock, where they can't move or take damage while in this state, sometimes providing crucial moments for their teammates to save them, whilst mine just allows me to get somewhere quicker, and in most cases it's just around a corner into the enemy's fire. At around this 3 to 5 completed matches point, I was on a brink. I was really frustrated with the abilities and not really enjoying my time because of that. Then I had an epiphany. I was getting mowed down so many times as I went around corners from sprinting, why not just use the invisibility or armor lock ability myself? If I can't beat them, join them, right? Well, in my haste of trying to figure out how to access loadouts, I locked in the wrong ability. But it turns out this mistake saved the rest of my playthroughs. I chose the clone jutsu technique, but instead of a dashingly handsome clone launching their own Rasengan at my enemies, my clone would just run straight until it hit the marker that I had selected for it. At first I thought this was somewhat useless, but people were holding corners or just sniping open spaces in a field between bases, and I found that in 99% of the cases, they would just aim for my clone. This really enlightened my third eye for possibilities. Instead of getting mowed down, I started performing quite well. I tried out the other options too. Jetpacks and invisibility both have their situations, and armor lock seems OP, but that playstyle just wasn't my thing. What I found was that this element that I previously did not like was actually quite enjoyable, now that I found an avenue for it to actually elevate my gameplay. That being said, losing the ability to find powerful equipment across the map I think is still a net negative for the experience. They were fun dynamic changes for each and every fight, and a lot of them were just outright removed. What did stand out though was the maps, and not in a good way. This could be biased because the Master Chief Collection may be prioritizing horrendous maps like it did for my time with Halo 3, but these maps I played on had next to no personality. Some of my favorite aspects of Halo 3's multiplayer was its map selection and variance between them. Now, this wasn't wholly Halo 3 by itself. A lot of its most appealing maps were upgraded maps from previous games, but I really did not find any appealing personality to any of the maps I played on in Reach. The closest feeling I could relay for the experience was the maps I played on for custom lobbies in Halo 3. These felt like sterile simulations of something I downloaded from Forge, but lacked the vibrance and life that a majority of the predecessor's maps had. I even asked my friend who had a stint with Reach a couple months back about his experience, plainly asking him, not giving him my perspective to lead him in any direction. And he said they felt like gray boxes, something you'd find in Roblox. I know what some of you are probably saying. There's a reason for this, and the reason is somewhat sound. Reach came packed with the refined version of Forge, and this game gave a lot to the community to build out maps however they would like to. I think that this is a reasonable explanation, and I'll dive into it more in the Forge section, but I think my multiplayer experience was hurt by just how bland these maps felt in comparison. I played quite a few different game modes, most notably I love SWAT, but in Reach it's not the same because of one aspect. There is no BR. My aim is atrocious. The burst fire of the BR hides this fact quite well, and the single fire of the DMR resulted in me never quite getting a foothold in Reach's SWAT mode. I also ventured into the big team battle format for the nostalgic vehicle-on-vehicle sandbox combat, but just like in Halo 3, big team battles on the collection is a pain, with teammates team killing or running around aimless and eventually leaving the match, which results in the second half of matches being actual slogs. Reach also took ODST's Firefight mode and made it altogether more customizable. The thing is, I actually prefer ODST's variant better. It felt more arcadey and fun, whilst Reach's I found significantly more challenging and difficult. And I can imagine the reasons I like ODST better are the same reasons people may prefer Reach's, having an actual challenge. In ODST, health is your real limiting factor, mobs are generally not difficult, and it felt harder to get overrun. Reach has health as an option still, but mobs easily overwhelm you. Once again, this is probably a pro for a lot of people, but it's just not something subjectively that I enjoy. I really enjoyed my time with Reach's multiplayer, way more than I expected actually, because as I said, I came in with a chip on my shoulder. Halo 3 is my favorite game and multiplayer experience ever, so I may be averse to change, and was most definitely back then. I am thoroughly surprised though, after revisiting it and finding my groove, that I genuinely had a much better time than I expected. When I finally gave into the armor abilities, I enjoyed myself and my time with its change to the formula. Maps have to be the worst element of this experience. They just feel lacking and almost generated. And this is entirely the fault of one of Reach's greatest strengths, its new revamped Forge. Forge in Halo 3 was a major success, one of the leading reasons the game stayed active for so long. DLC maps were nice, but combining Forge maps with game modes let you play whatever type of game you wanted. Now, here's the thing. Forge's success in Halo 3 was actually a surprise. The mode was designed for simple alterations for existing maps. Players pushed past those limits and created experiences beyond what Bungie ever expected. Things like Forge art and minigames like Griffball. In response, Bungie released dedicated Forge canvas maps in later DLC. First Foundry, then Sandbox. Mostly blank slates that netted some of the craziest race courses and jump modes in all of Halo 3. So, going into Reach, Bungie doubled down. Halo 2 and Halo 3 released with 12 maps. Halo Reach released with 8 and Forge World. The idea was to take Halo 3's Forge success and give a lot more expansive tools and a giant skybox for the community to run with. And that's what happened. 5 weeks after release, 2 of the most popular community maps were officially added to matchmaking.
And this trend would continue.
Forge World itself was Bungie's magnum opus. It started as 5 separate maps, all designed to be Forge canvases. To cut dev time, they shared a skybox. But then, Reach's engine got a rendering trick that was called impostering that made distant objects cheap to draw. One giant playable space became feasible. Bungie combined the 5 maps, added 4 more regions, and shipped it as Forge World. And I vividly remember some actual Goliaths that were built in there. It helps that the tools and even some of the elements and forces in play were tweaked to create effects that just weren't possible in the previous iteration. But this was a double-sided blade. The focus on Forge and the future community maps gave the game great length and fun long term, but the baseline maps shipped with the game for launch were lacking, and ultimately this was my biggest gripe coming back to this 16 years later. That being said, this is one of the crown achievements of Reach, and Forge just doesn't get the credit it's due for giving modern Halo games legs to evolve for the casual and fun player base. I do think it's about time that we talk about Bungie though. In my ODST video, I was excited about the game. I enjoyed how out there it was in terms of setting and design. I made the claim that it's a type of game that just can't get made in this modern age anymore. And in response, I got quite a few comments saying that the game was just a contract filler. So that got me curious as I went into the follow-up. Was Halo Reach a contract filler for Bungie to get out and run, or was it a beautiful finale for them as they faded away into the sunset?
The answer is slightly nuanced, but it's both.
After Halo 3's release, Bungie still owed Microsoft 2 more Halo games. One of them was going to be a Halo Chronicles. Peter Jackson had formed his own game studio, Wingnut Interactive, to make it. A small team from Bungie was part of this development, but in 2006, the funding for Jackson's movie and game fell through. Bungie was left owning a game they hadn't planned to make. That's how ODST happened. A rush job made on the Halo 3 engine to fulfill the contract. That's why it's this weird expansion to Halo 3, yet it's its own game as well.
Halo Reach, on the other hand, was in development since 2007 and was always Bungie's beautiful exit plan, though it was originally titled Halo 4.
This is where the post-exit plan also started sprouting. Bungie called Reach their swan song publicly. Art lead Steve Cotton said as much in the Forge World FIDOC, but privately they were already building the next thing. Midway through 2009, Bungie started developing their next game, codenamed Tiger, which would become Destiny. 5 months before Reach launched, Bungie signed a 10-year, $500 million publishing deal with Activision. Destiny's engine ended up as a fork of the Reach engine, and you could make the leap connecting Reach's armor loadout design to what would become Destiny's core class philosophy, but I truly think that Reach is great, and this doesn't take away from that. I think there's a large audience that disregards Reach because there's no chief. It's not technically a continuation of the story, but it's the roots of it. Technically, this is Halo Zero, the birth of the adventure right before our main character steps into the light. I don't think it has one of the best campaigns in terms of design and structure, but I do think it has potentially the most compelling narrative and emotional arc out of all the games. And that's worth a lot. These same folks also don't like the change to armor ability loadouts, me included. I've come around to them, but
a lot of the fun of things like power drain and health regen are just gone.
And sprint locked behind the ability slot feels underpowered. Either don't have sprinting or let everyone have it. I really enjoyed the strides they made with Forge, doubling down on the part of Halo 3 that really shaped its future, even if it caused some phoned-in maps in the process.
I unfortunately don't have the nostalgic fondness for Reach like I do Halo 3, but it provided a stellar campaign experience, and
it advanced the Halo multiplayer formula in new ways. Some good, some bad,
but altogether a great move forward.
I was shocked how many people named Reach as their favorite in the series, but after playing it again, I can see why. As Bungie's last installment, they absolutely did an amazing job. Reach solidifies an unforgettable experience that doesn't ruin the main trilogy, but adds to it, expanding on what was so great in its predecessors. When you factor in my theory that everyone's favorite Halo was the one that they had their first real multiplayer experience with, Reach being a lot of people's #1 makes a lot of sense. I think there's a bunch of 2000s babies that will ride or die for this. So if that's true, then the Halo 5 diehards should be turning 21 this year, which means they can legally drink away their sorrows in the US. Thanks for watching. A like or a hype or even a comment about which is your favorite part of Halo Reach goes a long way with showing YouTube that this content is worth showing others. I highly recommend checking out my last video on my first time falling in love with BioShock nearly 20 years after its release. As someone scared of his shadow, it was an intriguing shock to get over my fear, but when I did, I fell in love with the story playing out for me. And the video needs a little bit of love, so any help is appreciated. Or consider subscribing or becoming a channel member to help support this video series with a few extra benefits on the side. I am planning to play Dead Space next. I've pushed this scary game off for long enough. I was gonna have Reach be my last Halo for a bit, but I have this urge to play Combat Evolved right after Reach, so it's up in the air. But let me know what you think down below. Until next time, my name is EasyBreak. Toodaloo.